Well, what's up, everybody? Happy special broadcast Thursday. This was a bit of a train wreck. I don't know what else to say. Sorry for being late.
It's always my fault.
It is SK's fault. SK is really good at a lot of things, but technology is not one of them.
Nope.
At all.
And math. I'm not good at math either.
And apparently
I saw someone in the comments trying to blame Nom. Like, technology and cybersecurity is what I've done for 27 years, almost 30 years. That wasn't me.
No.
That was SK.
No. All we needed was the link. Give me a link. Just give me a link and we can figure it out. But it took a little while. But look, SK is fantastic at a lot of things. It's just not.
Yes, I am good at a lot of things. It's not technology and it's not math. Those two things are out. But also they were giving me directions and I was having to get links to Discord and put it in the chat and YouTube. And then I was having to get other videos from one Dropbox folder to another Dropbox folder. And I'm not the one to be doing this.
No.
So.
Which we just found out.
Well, nonetheless, folks, we're here and we have just what I think is going to be an absolutely explosive show. We have some special guests. You guys recognize these folks. Incredible special guests. Lisa Logan and our good friend Data Republican are here. Say hi, everybody.
Hey, how's it going?
We are excited. Lisa is going to join us along with her team, Data Republican and SK, and they have, I think, what is the next piece of the puzzle that we're going to have to talk through. So if you guys remember, Lisa joined us maybe, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, somewhere around there, and was introing an article that she wrote. Part 1, The American Color Revolution is Disguised as Democracy with Dignity. And she just dropped Part 2. And as I was reading through Part 2, I have to be honest with you, it scared the living crap out of me. What these people are planning to do to this country is going to end our national sovereignty. It's going to end our constitutional republic. And I hope that we have a chance to really dive into this. Now, I'm just going to be honest, Lisa, Data Republican, SK. I read through this thing probably 3 times and I was taking notes. I don't even know where to start. So what I typically like to do is try to walk through these articles. I don't think there's really any way to do any justice doing that. So I'm just going to let you guys run with it. Is that fair? And if there's areas where you feel like we should bring in some media, we should bring in some content to kind of show some background, let's do it. I do have a couple of things that I'm hoping to accomplish here, though. There's a couple of organizations that you have mentioned. There's a couple of NGOs that keep popping up. So I may jump in and say, hey, can you explain this? Can you explain that? But for the most part, I didn't even know how I was going to be able to fit in a walkthrough of this article in an hour and a half to 2 hours, because there is so much important content here that we have to understand. And you guys are the experts on it. So what I thought we would do is maybe start with just a very quick reminder of the first article, Part 1. Just give the audience a reminder of what you talked about last time you were here, and then we can jump into Part 2.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back on your show. Patriot Source podcast is one of my favorites. And really just what Data Republican and SK and I have been doing, which is exposed in Article 1, is exposing the large ecosystem of non-governmental organizations and civil society organizations behind what is happening right now, which is a color revolution to completely change our country. So that's really the gist of Article 1, is exposing this ecosystem and what their plans are. And really what, like you said, the name and the title, is to reframe what democracy is and the conditions required to experience democracy. And so they have done all sorts of things. So there are 4 B groups, what we call the bridging, the blocking, the belonging, and the which B am I missing, SK?
Breaking.
Well,
Their favorite part.
If they can't.
Bridging, blocking,
belonging, and I'm missing a B.
Wait, I have it right here.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on.
I feel like breaking is their favorite one, though.
Blocking, building,
right? Building the form of democracy that they want. The blocking is all of the stuff you're seeing happen with the No King's Day protests and the various things against Trump, right? The camp out outside the Capitol, et cetera. And then you have these bridging groups that pretend to be, oh, let's just bring red and blues together and it'll be great. And we'll have these conversations. But what they don't tell you is that they have trained facilitators organizing those conversations that are trained to get to synthesis. So you have to move your opinion further and further to the left, to the progressive side. You have to compromise. And really belonging, which is the heart of it all, which what I've been exposing for a long time, which kind of leads us into this article. Belonging and civic muscle is actually the heart of what their plan is. And the way that they do belonging is, really getting youth to identify with a lot of these things. They use these conversations to get them to really think of their peers as their family, as their schools as their family. And that's how they brainwash them into thinking that our democracy is broken. They need to advocate for a completely new version of America for the next 250 years.
Unbelievable.
So real quick, before we move on, Lisa, because I don't know if you can see the comments, but we can. And someone in the comments asked, why do they keep calling us a democracy when we are a constitutional republic? And you just described it, right? Because they don't want us to be a constitutional republic anymore. They're trying to nudge you, and they're using very specifically targeted language to get you to forget that we are supposed to be a constitutional republic, so they can nudge you into the place that they're trying to send us to. Is that right, or is there something more to it?
No, that's exactly right. And this whole, the threat to democracy, you keep hearing over and over and over again. It's like they get to define what democracy means at that point and decide what the threats are. So your free speech is a threat to their democracy, right? Because they want it to be inclusive and they want everybody to feel belonging, but you can't advocate for your own rights and your beliefs.
There's that word again. Hold on. Data Republican is texting me because her text to speech thing is not working. She said that you can replace all 4 B's of the 4B framework with bullshit. Also true. But she also said, I spent 6 months writing a whole book on what democracy is, and it can all be reduced to one word, bullshit. Also. Or if you want to be more precise, it's that one word that I can't say, the autopoiesis or whatever it is.
Autopoiesis, yeah.
Autopoiesis, right?
I don't know how to say it.
I spent 2 days researching and trying to understand what autopoiesis means.
I have no idea what it means. I read a lot. Language is like a thing I'm good at, ironically, and I have never seen that word until she sent it to me the other day, and my dumb ass said, can you please spell that phonetically?
And she said no.
All right, so let's dive in. I want to make sure that, because we have Data Republican with us and we so deeply value her impact and her perspective on this, we're going to try to make sure that we leave space for her to be able to comment. And to do that, she's going to be texting SK. So you're going to hear SK's incredible voice with Data Republicans and powerful insight, and it's going to be a great combination. So we're going to have to make sure we leave space for that. So you'll occasionally hear me saying, hey, does Data Republican have anything to add?
Yeah, she said it didn't happen overnight, but it did get warped over like 100 years. If you're a white collar worker, I guarantee you've worked for an autopoietic company. The only difference is that in our case, taxpayer money allowed it to keep growing instead of going bankrupt. Autopoiesis is when the only input you accept is your own output. Basically, you believe your own bullshit.
Yeah, crazy. All right, so let's do this. I want to dive into Article 2. That's why we brought you here. That's why you're joined us to talk about this. And I think this takes a really nasty turn as I was reading through it, because this one is all about how do you brainwash our kids into becoming the future of this perverted version of democracy, which we all know really is global communism. That's where they're taking us. So the title of this one, and Nom, can you get ready to pull up picture 1, if you don't mind? The title of this American color revolution never lets a crisis or a celebration go to waste. So Nom's going to pull up just a snapshot of what I pulled from the first part of the article, because not only is the graphic that you used incredibly powerful, but the way you open this article is so important. So here's the way you opened it. Do you have that up, Nom? There it is. All right. So you started with a great treason that happened nearly 50 years ago on America's bicentennial birthday is about to make a reappearance on its 250th. Next 250, a national initiative launched September 4th, is celebrating the occasion by unveiling its Declaration of Interdependence, a document and policy platform which calls on America to create a new culture that leaves no one behind, a culture that values a living wage, sensible gun reform, access to the ballot box, climate responsibility, and healthcare for all. And I love how you grabbed an image of Adolf Hitler, and I want to put this back up real quick now. Can you throw that back up? An image of Adolf Hitler quoted saying, "He who owns the youth gains the future." 250 years of America. We're just going to start there, and I'm just going to let you roll with it. Thoughts?
Yeah, that was an intentional choice, and it came to me because when I first started talking about social emotional learning, which is the brainwashing program that brought me to this whole space, right, where I'm talking to people and I'm warning them about what's coming, because it was a powerful thing for me, because my grandfather was a World War II vet. I think I've told you guys this before, and he'd tell me all about the concentration camps, and you think to yourself, like, how did those people get there, right, where they didn't say anything, or the Hitler youth, right? How did those youth get to a point where they were okay with what was happening in Germany, and to the Jews and stuff, and it's because they got brainwashed. They got put in these Hitler youth camps and these training programs where this is the mindset that they adopted. And really, the next part of America 250, or the next part of this color revolution using America 250, is to use the partnerships that the states are going to have with this particular group called More Perfect, and all of the suggested partners that they should say these states should work with to have programs for their youth to celebrate this. I think they call it a semi-quincentennial. I think that's the verbiage.
That's the word you use. Yep.
Is to have these particular programs, and we can dive into the article, that again bring youth through the same type of conversations that social emotional learning uses to brainwash them. Again, like I said, to have these generative conversations. They form the conversation in a way with this Delphi technique to bring the kids out, to have them talk about these things, and to direct the conversation in a way that they believe they need to change America. That they, as they grow up, as they get into positions of power, all that stuff, that America's broken, it doesn't work for everybody. And exactly what you just said, this next 250 is all about bringing us into universal basic income, into,
Abundance.
direct democracy, where they have these, we already talked about these citizen assemblies, right? But it's going to be all DEI, where certain voices are going to have more sway than others, and that's how they're going to decide how they use their budget. So it's really kind of incorporating all the stuff we've talked about so far, but this time it's the youth they're using to basically move forward their agenda.
Yeah, but this isn't new, right? I mean, as I was reading your article, I was actually kind of surprised to know that this concept of a declaration of interdependence is something that started a long time ago. This isn't something that just recently popped up and they're driving it. Can you talk a little bit about the genesis of this Declaration of Interdependence, just briefly, and then we'll dive into who these organizations are? Because you did a great job laying out who I would consider really are the boogeymen, the people who are attempting covertly, and maybe not so covertly in some instances, to transform this country into a socialist shithole. That's what they're trying to turn it into. There's no doubt about it. But this started a long time ago. Can you talk briefly about this stupid interdependence thing?
This is our 250th birthday, but at America's 200th birthday, it's bicentennial. a very similar thing happened. A group came out with which was actually the World Affairs Council, came out with a Declaration of Interdependence, just like Next 250 has done. And they had a 5-step plan. And one of those plans was to have the NEA completely restructure the cardinal principles of education and come out with a Declaration of Interdependence for global education. And that's when they started teaching the kids that, sovereignty isn't so important. It's more important that everybody's provided for. And this is really what they've done. This is really the turn, I think, in education happened in 1976 when we had our 200th birthday. So this, it's interesting just to note, the World Affairs Council is also behind this America 250 as well, and they're the same folks that did it back in 1976.
That's right. Go ahead.
Well, so it sounds to me like in 1976, what you're saying, this is where in American education, because PatriotDad and I were born in 77. We weren't taught this stuff. We were taught progressivism as like a historical, from like a historical standpoint. We were taught about communism, all these things. But you get into later generations, like the millennials, they actually believe that this global socialism, this universal basic income is what they are owed. Are you telling me that this effort started in 1976 is what led to their belief system that exists now?
Did we lose Data Republican? Did she have to go?
I think she had to leave.
I think she had to go. Yeah, she was telling us she was so tired.
Oh, that stinks. That stinks.
She
We
told
love
us,
having her here, though.
no, listen, she's exhausted and she intentionally made it back to the hotel in time to join us, but she did tell us beforehand she'd only be able to be here for about 15 minutes or so because she was exhausted. And I don't blame her. She's been up since like 4 o'clock this morning.
Okay.
Right.
Well, let her know she is welcome back anytime, even if it's just for a few minutes. We will have her. We love her. She's fantastic. All right. Sorry for that interruption. Keep going. So,
your question real quick, Nom.
Yeah. So the question is, this effort in 1976 is what has actually led to like the millennial generation and Gen Z to come out of high school and come out of college with this belief that they are entitled to this universal basic income, and they're entitled to restrict gun ownership, and they're entitled to, all of these things that you're talking about in your article. These kids, these generations already believe that this is what they're owed. Did that start in 76 from this effort? Yes.
And it just intensified as they continued on. So, in 2015 is when they changed, they passed the ESHA, which was the Elementary, Secondary, and Education Act. ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. There's ESHA and then there's ESSA. But both of those put more of this, what I call sensitivity training, which was that method we talked about in the last time with Lewin, right? Like the brainwashing method of, this feedback loop that they're doing in schools, this brainwashing methodology that all came from the same place with kids. It's when they started more intensely putting sensitivity training in through stuff like social emotional learning and, environmental education, the international baccalaureate schools, all these they started changing the education standards so that this was what the worldview they were teaching them was, that, a lot of this systems thinking idea that you are not just, you're not just an individual entity, you are a part of a greater whole. And that whole is depending on you, and you have a responsibility to that whole.
This is where the Borg mindset comes in at. I mean, I regularly referred to the left as a Borg hive mind, where they all think exactly the same. And it comes from this type of indoctrination process through our public schools. Now, I think a lot of us, when we were advocating so heavily for Donald Trump to be reelected, we had a lot of high hopes that we were going to see things happen at the national level, which would trickle down to the local level to put a stop to this kind of stuff. And Donald Trump has, I think, made really important progress in shutting down the Department of Education, et cetera. But one of the things that you talk about is how that doesn't really matter, because it seems like they are figuring out ways to do an end around the federal process and are taking this straight to the local curriculums. Can you talk a little bit about how they're doing that?
Yeah, well, I noted in the article that back in 1976, it was the NEA, right, that put all these, training programs in place for kids. Now they're using their non-governmental organizations and the public-private partnerships that states are forming with these organizations. So, and this is the other thing I want to note, because I think it's important to say, is all these initiatives sound really good. And that's the problem with them, is that a lot of people are going to be fooled. But the reason why this time is so different, right? It's one thing to put it in public education, but the really goal is to change the culture. And you have to change the culture to really change things, because what happens is kids go to school, they get indoctrinated, and hopefully if they have a good home life, they go home and that's undone by their families. And so, like, for instance, one of the partnerships, and you can cue up that video for the Service Year Alliance, is to have them do something called the American Exchange Project. They're also advocating, and that's going to be where, for instance, a kid in like Oklahoma goes to Oakland and they switch places, right? So the kid from Oakland goes to Oklahoma, the kid from Oklahoma goes to Oakland, and they participate in a program there to learn more about the city and the culture and whatever else. But really the goal of that is to change the culture. It's to change the Oklahoma kid to have more progressive values, and it's so that the Oakland kid can bring his progressive values to Oklahoma. And that's really how all of this is working. So these exchange programs, just like when SK and I talk about how they use these international visitor leadership programs, where they bring these people over and their ambassador programs at like University of Utah, or they send our kids over there to a different country, the whole, and or Peace Corps, any of these other things that have been put into place really since the 70s. It's to move these people's worldview and to change the culture. Yeah.
Also, Brown University, as we're finding out, by the way.
Right, which is so scary. A lot of these people that have been brought over, and today we were working on with Data Republican, putting out information. SK had found a bunch of stuff. I cut a video about Ermia Fanayan, kind of a similar thing, right? Like put into place in a position of leadership at University of Utah to change the culture so that it would be anti-policing at the school through these research programs. So I just want to say, so kind of rounding out the whole thing. So the other thing they're doing through this, and kind of similar to the American Exchange Project, is this Service Year Alliance. So they want to have, just like Israel does. So in Israel, the students have to do a year of military service. Right. Alternatively, they can do a service year where they participate in service projects for the country. So this is what they want to bring here to the US. And this Service Year Alliance will put them into AmeriCorps programs like Teach for America, or thank goodness we finally did away with the Climate Corps. Thank goodness Donald Trump did that. The Climate Conservation Corps, all of these other Peace Corps, all of these are designed to, you want to know how to really brainwash somebody, you take them away from their families, right? Put them in a strange place with strange people, and it is the easiest way to indoctrinate kids. So they're thinking, I think, they're thinking that's the way they're going to get to these kids that make it through their whole K to 12 years and have a strong family and keep their strong values to completely push them over the edge.
Unbelievable. Nom, you want to play that video that she has to queue up?
I'm on it. Ready? Let's do it.
From the audience, I would love to hear more about the Service Year Alliance. This is so needed, and I've heard both political sides saying so for years. For example, bringing up the mandatory Israeli 2-year public service system.
So we were supposed to go to Israel to study the IDF and the civilian counterpart to the Israeli Defense Force system, which is a mandatory requirement to engage in national service, military service. But there are, options for civilian national service for those who don't qualify, or they opt out for religious reasons. And the pandemic hit, so we didn't get to go. which was frustrating. But General Stan McChrystal, who came back from commanding our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, said that less than 1% are serving in our nation's military, and called for large-scale civilian national service. And so he's the chair, and I'm his vice chair of the Service Year Alliance. Currently, there are 80,000 civilian national service opportunities in the United States for mostly young people, through the Peace Corps that John Kennedy created, VISTA, Lyndon Johnson created, AmeriCorps that Bill Clinton created, the NCCC, and then there's a whole large program, about 200,000 Americans who go into the Senior Corps, including like an encore career. You finish your first career and then you do something big for the country as an encore. We're working to grow that number to from 80,000 to 250,000 on a path to 1 million. And the good news is we wrote the first draft of the Civilian Climate Corps. It's in the reconciliation bill in Congress. If it passes, it'll be the largest investment in civilian national service since Franklin Roosevelt's Civilian Conservation Corps.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm not just a fan of like who you are and what you represent, but like Teach for America as a whole. I very much align with the mission. I'm a Teach for America Houston 2019 alum. I recruited for Teach for America. I currently still help onboard Corps members. So I've seen all the facets of what the organization does. So Teach for America not only is giving Corps members the opportunity to like be really good teachers and be effective, but I feel I gathered a lot more like other skills. I was exposed to DEI and identity work for the first time in my life by being in TFA. I got policy, advocacy, and community organizing skills. So my question is, how can business schools ensure underrepresented minorities or people of color are not always given or feel like they have the responsibility to educate students who are part of the dominant culture? And what I mean by that is like white folks that show conflicting behaviors such as racism, implicit bias, and discrimination. How can like business schools maybe, and not just faculty, administration, or other students share that responsibility to educate the community as a whole?
Man, they're
This
not
language just
just
makes my stomach turn.
I
I'm sorry,
know.
that language just makes my stomach turn.
It's like
They're
a
not-
completely different language.
they're creating advocates is what they're doing.
That's exactly what
Right.
they're doing. But I think it's important to note AmeriCorps is also one of the organizations that was heavily involved in all of this. And the Trump administration cut off a lot of the funding to AmeriCorps. He canceled nearly $400 million in active grants, which was about 41% of the agency's roughly $1 billion budget. And they fired almost all of its staff.
Well, that's good
Right.
news. All right.
And so I sent you guys a link to their, and I hope that I had something to do with that. I was able to publish an article in the Federalist a few weeks before that happened and exposing all of this, that it was in violation of his executive order. And I remember emailing the girl who helped to edit my piece and being like, hey, I hope that we had something to do with that.
Well,
Do you want me to
maybe
pull that
you
up?
did.
I've got it.
Well, hold on,
Don't
before-
let her be humble.
Yeah,
She's
she
the one that
absolutely has
caused
something to
it.
do with it. All right, before we do that though, so we can see comments that are coming in over on the live chats on Rumble and YouTube, and somebody asked a really important question. And I'd love your perspective on this, Lisa, and I think I have one that I can share as well. SK probably does too. What is holding parents back from pulling their kids out of public school to avoid this?
Complicated question, because my kids are still in public school. You cannot shield them forever. I feel like it's more, I think there are some kids, I would definitely say pull them out. There are some kids who are more vulnerable to this, who cannot, for whatever reason, right? Maybe they're a little more soft-hearted. They have a harder time standing in their convictions. I would pull those kids. But there are kids out there that can stand on their own 2 feet and go through this, and you can have those hard conversations around the dinner table at nighttime. What are you learning at school? Why is this flawed? Why is it flawed to think that every single person should be on welfare or a UBI? Like, have those conversations with your kids, because even when they leave your bubble, right, your home, they're going to have to go out in the world, and all of this stuff still exists. So it's better that you talk through it with them the ones that can handle being around this, because then they'll have those answers, right? So I think you have to, it's you as a parent being able to evaluate, can my kid handle this?
Yeah, totally agree. So we homeschool our kids. So my wife has been homeschooling, and I try to help out as much as I can outside of what I do full time, but she's been homeschooling both of our kids since kindergarten. So my son is 14. He's technically a freshman this year. My daughter is 11, technically in 6th grade. And I'm just here to tell you, you cannot avoid this stuff, because as soon as they leave your home, they're going to be influenced by it one way or another. My daughter dances at a pretty well-renowned ballet company here locally, and the influence that she gets from the kids that she dances with, who are all great kids, this is the influence that she's hearing. My son played soccer on the local high school JV soccer team. The influence is the same. So pulling your kids out of school to shield them from this is a temporary solution. But as parents, we have a much bigger responsibility than just taking our kids away from the things that we think are going to be challenging for them, is to prepare them to be able to deal with it. I could put my son back in this environment today, and he would wreck these people from this ideology, because he understands who he is, whose he is, where he comes from, and what he believes in. So, we can have a long conversation about homeschool and the benefits of it, but folks, you're not going to be able to avoid this. It is your responsibility, mom and dad, parents, grandmas, grandparents, your responsibility to make sure your children understand the value of national sovereignty and individualism, and the importance of teaching them where our country came from, who we are at our core, and where we're going, and to make sure they understand the language that's being used, so that it doesn't subtly start to shift how they think about things. It's your job. And we're here to help. This is why we have Lisa on the show. This is why we do this, is so that you guys can have those conversations with your children and help them understand what it is that we're dealing with.
Yes. Well said, for sure. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. And if your kids are young, I would definitely take them out, especially who live in certain places. Like, they are not strong enough yet to be able to suffer the slings and arrows of what they're teaching as young as kindergarten.
Yeah,
So.
Totally agree. All right. So I don't know if it makes sense to spend a lot of time talking about the specific organizations, but one thing that maybe you can help people do, because we're going to make sure we drop the link to your article in the info section of these videos so people have it. I don't know if it's crystal clear who these organizations are, like Next 250, America 250. How do these organizations play together? And then what is the goal? Because it doesn't really make sense on the surface why an organization that is designed to try to implement this Declaration of Interdependence would then begin partnering with America 250, who's supposed to be consulting to help people celebrate the nation's birthday. How do those connect?
Yeah, let me thread the needle on that. It's America 250 and Next 250 do not appear to be working together. What they appear to be is two sides of the coin. So Next 250 is the bad guy, right? I think most American citizens would be like, Declaration of Interdependence, what the heck are you thinking? Like, what is that? And the women who are running that program, Linda Sarsour is from Empower, which is like
stop. Did you just say Linda Sarsour?
You just said oh. Okay.
Remember the names, people. Remember the names. Remember the names. We say this all the time. Linda Sarsour is one of the most destructive people to probably ever step foot in this country. She's an absolute disaster. We may actually have to do an entire show on Linda Sarsour so you understand who she is. She is a freaking nightmare. Remember the names. Sorry.
Yeah.
Continue.
And there's another lady that she's working with. They're both a part of SCORE, which is like Solidarity and Racial Council of Equity. It was something that was a part of the Kettering Foundation. So those two ladies started this Next 250 initiative. And what they don't tell you, and this kind of ties into this stuff that SK and Data Republic and I have been exposing with this Intermovement Impact Project and who's involved with that, is the Declaration of Interdependence was actually written by somebody named Angela Glover Blackwell. She was heavily involved in the Thriving Together movement, which created the springboard behind the federal plan. So that whole racial way of divvying up federal grants and stuff, that came from her and her ilk. But really that group's goal is to completely change our country from measuring gross domestic product for our economic growth to these really, what I call the conditions for well-being, which is all the social determinants of health. So they're going to say, well, we need affordable housing for people to have well-being, and we need to have, so it's a well-being economy, right? So they're going to be provided all these things, including the Marxist training programs, in order to experience well-being. So she's actually behind this Declaration of Interdependence that Next 250 put out. And so people go, oh, well, that's terrible. So it's great. Look at this national initiative called America 250, and our states are doing all these things to celebrate our birthday. And that's going to look like a great initiative. It's going to sound great, but really it's doing the same thing that Next 250 is doing. And a really good example of this is one of the organizations called Made by Us, which has already partnered. So my state, Utah, is partnering with Made by Us, and they're doing something called Civic Season, and they celebrate the time between Juneteenth, which is a made-up holiday, and July 4th. And so I note in the article, this isn't the first time that they've partnered with Utah to do this. And what they did during those 14 days was they had a film for every day. And they were promoting films like Saving Capitalism and Milk, which is about Harvey Milk, the LGBTQ activist, and all of these other things that you could see as you looked at this article with all of these movies they were suggesting. The whole point is to have youth watch these movies and to change their minds about America.
So I threw a photo of Linda Sarsour up here because while people don't always remember the names, even though you should, a lot of people remember faces.
Right.
Do you guys remember Linda Sarsour, who was at one point in charge of the Women's March, Day Without Women? She is a radical left-wing activist. And I'm sorry, I'll be the guy to say it, but given the type of events that we're seeing in our country right now, the radicalism that's happening from these Islamo-fascists, does anybody want somebody that is dressed like this leading organizations that are influencing the transformation of our culture? I don't. And more importantly, I understand who she is and where she comes from. This is a dangerous person. I didn't realize that she was in charge of that organization. This just makes it 100 times worse.
Yeah, 100 times worse. So Made by Us is going to make it seem like, oh, it's a nice little organization, and they're just helping kids. They're helping kids be involved. They have a thing called Youth 250, which is having them be in the voices involved with what happens to America in the next 250 years. But then look at the video, and you can cue it up. It's a very short video this time of how they celebrated their first birthday, and you'll see kind of what they're about.
Do it. What?
Which one? Is this the Made by Us or is the American?
Made by
American
Us,
250?
yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go. Ready?
Well, that seems harmless. That seems just a lovely video of a very diverse group of people. What am I missing?
Unless you pay particular attention to some of the images that were in there, like the BLM image, you had what's his name up there, fentanyl, what's his face, George Floyd, and I may have to go back and watch this. Did I see an image that said "Pack it up, Paul Revere"? As in,
yeah, because they want to elevate that other lady. I can't remember her name now. That also, I guess, rode on that same day that Paul Revere rode, but she was a woman of color. And so really what they're doing is they're reframing history. Now, I have no problem with recognizing people in our history that have not been white. I mean, that is not the message here, is that they are changing the way, and they are teaching our history to the kids to make it seem like America is oppressive and we don't recognize people, and like we're recognizing the wrong people, whatever it is. They're going to frame it so that, again, history will be rewritten in the way that they want to tell it.
SK, you raised your hand, but you're on mute.
Yes.
What's up?
Well, because I didn't want to interrupt. But
you have to interrupt to be heard here, SK. You know
it's
that.
your
it's
show,
okay.
SK. You can
No, it's not. Listen, it's not. Okay, so I think it's important for everybody to understand that this Made by Us portion of the America 250 stuff is done through the museums, through the Smithsonian. It's through all of the museums across the country and libraries. But that's important to understand. This is an actual government sponsored program through the national museums and libraries and all of that stuff. But earlier, when we were talking about Next 250 and pointing out that they are not connected, they operate independently, you have to understand that you have Made by Us putting up this imagery and having things like BLM and talking about these things through the museums. And then you have Next 250 that's like backing up the same message with also the solution of being the interdependence. What's it called?
Declaration of Interdependence.
Declaration of Interdependence. So I think that's important because it's all about social justice, healing, and interdependence.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, SK, in the comments, you just got accused of being Canadian because you're so polite.
Yeah.
You should hear her in the green room.
Yeah, you should have heard me trying to get all this. These videos you're watching, you're welcome. You're watching them because I was able to figure out how to get them from one folder to another.
That's straight up Oklahoma there. So as I was reading through your article, I just keep coming across all these names that continue to pop up, these organizations that continue to pop up. Like you talked about Made by Us. You talked about Unite, Shriver's organization. You talked about Mask Up America. You talked about Common Purpose. Like, how did all these things fit in? Like, what are these organizations all trying to accomplish?
Brainwashing people. And there's a chart I put in the middle of the article kind of showing, and it was kind of like an aha moment for me when I was writing this article that I've been looking at this organization that's been doing this for years in the UK called Common Purpose. Mm-hmm. And that same guy who was running that, his guy, Stephen Heinz, basically what we talked about last time, Stephen Heinz was the guy who was responsible for putting out our Common Purpose document, right? And in Data Republican's thread, when she exposed this color revolution, and we talked about this, our Common Purpose document being behind it, really, and she had a video there of the guy who was introducing videos of both Stephen Heinz and John Bridgeland, who you just saw in both of the John Bridgeland who just saw in that last Service Year Alliance video talking. And in that video, the guy introducing them says, "More perfect is the implementation arm of the Our Common Purpose report." So this whole idea that these brainwashing programs came over here from the UK. John Bridgeland is super good friends with Tim Shriver behind the Dignity Index, and they actually formed an organization similar to More Perfect during COVID called the COVID Collaborative. And it's going to work the same way as More Perfect did, right? So they're a national advisory board, and all they're doing is just partnering with states to say, hey, we have the best experts to say how you should celebrate America's 250th birthday, just like they decided how your state was going to recover from COVID and put in all of these Marxist programs. And took away your rights by using their ad council friends to tell everyone to mask up. So again, this is the same playbook, but in America. And actually, Tim Shriver, I found out, so Stephen Heinz, and this is kind of probably a sidebar a little bit, but Stephen Heinz was over there. He came here and formed Demos, and there was a Demos out in the UK. Demos was formed with his friend Charles Halpern, who not only financed CASTLE and social emotional learning, which is the brainwashing program they started here. It wasn't called our Common Purpose, though. It was called social emotional learning. And it's the same brainwashing program yet again, right? All this is you're seeing over and over again the way that they use training programs and their partners that implement these training programs in a certain way to get people to change their minds, to literally brainwash them into a certain mindset and worldview.
So there's a trend. I mean, in this paragraph that you just went over, where you're talking about the Mask Up America, you're talking about groups like Unite, Mask Up America, and those sorts of organizations. They existed to sort of tell your state how they're going to get through COVID. They're the ones that are telling you that trust the science, even though there is no longitudinal science and any of this. They're telling you that the 6-foot distancing was actually a thing. Every single thing that you've mentioned here, you even mentioned fair vote, right? Where those are the folks that are pushing the things like the ranked choice voting and the open primaries. Everything that they're prescribing is designed to steal your sovereignty from you. Literally everything. I mean, the ranked choice voting, where your individual vote doesn't matter anymore. Open primaries, your vote in your party doesn't matter anymore, because now they can come in and they can vote for your people and they can put in who they want. All of the COVID protocols, every one of them existed to steal your sovereignty from you, and they were wrong. They were wrong at the time, and they knew they were wrong at the time. This is wild.
Yeah, and it's crazy. So I challenge your audience to go look at who's involved on the COVID Collaborative National Advisory Board, and then visit More Perfect's website, and you'll notice much, if not almost all, of the same people.
So you talked about the UK, and I have been railing on the UK over the last couple of weeks as I've been diving deeper into what I believe is a foreign intelligence interference operation using people like Candace Owens and others to try to disrupt the MAGA movement. And come to find out that Candace Owens' husband was educated at Cambridge. Common Purpose, those organizations are based out of Cambridge, aren't they? Isn't that where a lot of this stuff comes from? Those same organizations come from that university, where a lot of this concept of how to transform a country comes out of that. Is that right?
Cambridge and Oxford. And what should be noted is that those Common Purpose training programs that got imported here as social emotional learning all came out of the Tavistock Institute there. Those are the people that are doing the gender clinics and all of that. So it continually goes back to brainwashing. And Kurt Lewin, who started the National Training Laboratories here, that eventually became social emotional learning, he was friends with Eric Trist of Tavistock Institute, and it's the same brainwashing program there that it is here. And it's funny, there is a parallel chart that I'm making of what happened in the UK and what happened here, and it's literally the same. They put it in these social behavioral training programs, both at the government in the UK. They figured out how to nudge people, they said. Obama started the same thing like just several years later. So it's literally the same playbook, but just maybe we're about 5 to 10 years apart from each other.
Yeah.
And what people need to understand is the MAGA movement and President Trump is an existential threat to them being successful in doing this stuff. You guys remember, it wasn't long before the Utah Valley University Turning Point USA event that Charlie Kirk was actually at Cambridge, and he was debating a bunch of their scholars down there on the well of whatever that floor is, and he was dragging them across their own floor on their own campus, with ease. And then shortly thereafter, we have what happened to Charlie, because Charlie and the message that he was putting out there was also an existential threat to all of this. Literally everything that you've written here, Charlie was the antithesis of it, and he was pulling kids away from it.
Yeah, and the scary part of the second scary part of this is that one of the other organizations partnering, especially in Utah, is the Constitutional Studies program at UVU, where he was shot. And what SK and I have been finding is a linkage between the TPUSA folks that were at UVU, are also a part of this Constitutional Studies exchange program, where they send students here to Oxford to participate in a Constitutional Studies program where they're studying constitutional conventions, like where they change people's constitution. And also Angela Glover Blackwell of PolicyLink, all over their website, has the fact that they're trying to change our 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to basically reframe it that it never just included slaves, but it also includes people like illegal immigrants. So
that's where the birthright citizenship argument is going to, it's firing right at that.
Guess when the article that was talking about that recently said when they'll probably have their decision ready? You'll never guess.
Right around the 250th birthday of our country?
Not just sometime next year, by July 4th.
Okay. So what you're saying is the Supreme Court will likely have their decision on that case by July 4th.
Correct.
Is that like a Boston Tea Party type decision? Is that what that is? It kind of feels like it.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Certainly is.
We'll find out.
Real quick, before we move off to on the subject but down the road, the TPUSA students at the chapter at UVU, the ones who were part of that program that with Cambridge, were they also the ones who got Charlie to go there and debate? Were they involved? Does anybody know if they're involved in that effort to get him over there?
I've heard conflicting things, right? Okay. I know that someone who we won't mention came out with, I guess he did have an event request form that was talked about in the news. So they did approach UVU. Now, I've also heard that Charlie viewed these chapters like almost like planning churches in a way, right? Mm-hmm. He was like, build it and I will come. Yep. So the fact that because I remember reaching out to somebody and I said, hey, I feel like it's kind of weird that the University of Utah UVU thing just like that chapter literally just started right before he was supposed to come here. And they said, that's really not unusual, because he'll say, hey, but the fact that this was the first stop on his tour, and like, there's so many weird non-coincidences to me that are alarming to me. And then especially the fact that the TPUSA members that we found at UVU, because I was thinking, like, why am I not hearing anything about, like, no statement from any of the UVU chapter members of TPUSA? And I started looking into it, and this is how I got in touch with SK and Data Republican, because I was like, I am just like, these people who are supposing TPUSA, who are should be all about freedom and liberty, also belong to this thing called the Utah International Mountain Forum that are all about the UN SDGs. And I was like, that just doesn't make sense to me, right? The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, because that's, they want global communism. So I was like, it doesn't make sense. So I don't know what happened. I know sometimes in big organizations like that, chapters can get away from people. They're not vetting every chapter. So, I mean, I don't know if that's what happened, but I just think it's concerning, right? And then especially considering what happened to Charlie, it leaves big questions for me.
Very big questions. And this is why I'm not ready to let this topic go, because we have, from day one, since the assassination, we have known that there have been other people involved. And I think we have been able to identify some of those that we believe have been involved in some manner, whether it's foreknowledge, whether it's strange connections to people who probably should have had no role in any of this. SK, you're not done researching this, are you? You're not done researching the connections between, because here's the thing. I've been really, really hard on Candace Owens and what I'm calling her Candyland cult over the last couple of weeks for obvious reasons, because I think they are intentionally trying to destroy the only thing that's going to stop this from happening. And I can't help but listen to them talk and really just kind of rant and lose their minds and wonder, why are they seeming to want to shift people's focus away from understanding and pulling at this thread?
Well,
this thread is the important one.
Yes.
Why are they trying to redirect people away from this one?
I don't know. I don't, like we've talked about before, I don't know if it's the tips box being people that are trying to distract away from the truth, but you've heard me say how many times when talking about this subject that I feel like Candace Owens touches the truth and then makes an immediate 90-degree turn to it's the Jews, or blaming TPUSA and Erica Kirk and people close to him for something horrific. And number one, I don't think any accusation should be made without concrete evidence. Asking questions is okay. Saying I think there's weird things going on here is okay. But I do not think that TPUSA is responsible for anything that happened to Charlie Kirk, just for the record. And I also do not think that it was like 100% our State Department. I think our State Department is probably adjacent via organizations. And I definitely think that we have some three-letter agencies that aren't supposed to be operating in the United States that are operating in the United States to help this color revolution, the same way we have USAID people and all of those things actually working on U.S. soil, which is crazy that they just say it out loud. But, you know, this is where we are. And this is the important thing to focus on when looking into what happened to Charlie Kirk. But first and foremost, I want to make sure that just because we found some ties between TPUSA and some questionable organizations, or what word am I looking for? Like
programs
whatever, does not mean that we think that TPUSA was involved in any way whatsoever. I do not think that TPUSA had any knowledge of any of these things, and I do not think that they knew the actual political leanings or values of some of the people that were at this chapter.
Right, and that's the part I think we need to
honestly, like the climate at UVU, and I will say this over and over again. That school is a United Nations school, and they are full on aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, they literally brought them here. Remember we talked about this? There's the only place besides New York they've ever been in the United States had a meeting. So I think that was something they were not aware of. Probably they brought Charlie here, and the fact that is so out in the open. And I know that people have shared our work with Candace. I know people who have sent it to her. The fact that she's ignoring this completely when there are some definite questionable things in this arena says a lot.
Says a lot.
It says a lot.
It says pretty much everything we need to know, especially when you look into the ties between the UK, the EU, the UN. There are lots of questionable things going on here, and you also have to look at the ties to the three-letter agency that isn't supposed to be operating here, because Utah Valley University has a lot of ties to that agency, including the Center for National Security Studies and several other things. So, I mean,
so are you telling me that the research that you ladies, the amazing research that you ladies have done, was put into her tips box, and it's the only tip she didn't read live on air, like she had vetted it and it was fact? Are you telling me that that's what happened?
Well, I mean,
I'm sure people
it's
who
not
have been talking to her directly that gave her this information.
Wow. Holy crap.
I don't know how that didn't make it out of her tips box, because a lot of other garbage did.
Well, I'll tell you how it didn't make it out of her tip box, because she didn't want it to make it out of her tip box. We're going to have to continue to address this. Patriot Mom was just looking at me like, you told me 60 minutes, so I'm going to have to roll. I want to frame this up.
Brown.
I know we're going to have to do that another night. or unless you guys can continue, I'm going to have to drop. But
No, I'm gonna have
Lisa,
to go as well.
is there anything that we missed? Is there anything about this article, about this topic, or if there's anything you want to share about where you're going next? I would love to give you a couple of minutes on the floor to do that.
Oh boy. Well, I think an article needs to get written about this constitutional stuff going on, as far as what they plan to do with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And I'm going to work with a constitutional expert actually on that. In fact, might have them even write that article for me and just hand them that information, because I feel like they need to do it justice. And then the other thing is, like, the other aspect of this is that well-being economy they're turning us into, and how they're going to, all of this is tied to what's called the abundance agenda. So I'm going to write a whole article about what the abundance agenda is, the Club of Rome versus the Club for Growth, and basically what they're planning to do with our economy.
Wow. All right. Well, we're looking forward to it. And don't feel like you have to wait until your next article is published to join. You can join us anytime you want.
And I just
Well,
want to
thank
say,
you.
I am amazing at keeping secrets and not telling you guys everything that I know. Ask Lisa about what it's like when she gags me and I can't talk about stuff.
Wait, you mean there's things that you're not telling us, SK? That's not
every
the deal.
day, all day.
That's not how this is supposed to work. It's our job to not tell anybody else, but it's your job to tell us everything that you're learning so that we can know. You have to. All right, whatever.
All right,
hey, folks, you're going to notice over the next few days as we.
Lisa, what's your, before you leave, real quick, Lisa, people are asking for your X, your how to get a hold of you.
So you can find me at I am Lisa Logan on X. You can find all of the articles I've written on my Substack called Education Manifesto, which is lisalogan.substack.com. And I have a YouTube channel called Parents of Patriots.
And those videos are super informative, super, super. Do not watch them if you do not want to learn things and you do not want your mind to be absolutely blown.
Awesome.
Carry on.
All right. So, folks, you're going to notice over the next few days, our intro and exit video is going to have to be played without sound, because we found out that the audio we've been using is one that we have to subscribe to some weird thing in order to be able to continue using.
It's copyrighted and we don't have a license to use it.
There you go. So in order to make sure that these videos don't get demonetized and get our account in trouble, you're just going to see our video without sound until I can get that fixed. So bring it up, Nom. Without sound, here's our exit.
You can sing it for us, Patriot Dad.
I don't think I can.
I don't think I
can. We could talk over it if we want.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think I'm allowed. I don't think I'm allowed to sing it either. Wait, are you playing it? Yeah, play it.
You do have to say what SK says in her voice, Nom.
Oh my God. Lisa.
It is not our responsibility to fix the things that we didn't break, folks. It's not our
bullets
job.
and the punches have been flowing in only one direction.
I've been trying to tell you guys how corrupt all these things are.
Oh man, that was really
This is great.
God.
This is great.
All right, y'all.
All right.
We'll see you next time.